Hello and welcome everyone. I am Stacey Ryan and I am a teacher in Kansas. My background is middle school math and now I work with teachers and students around the topics of technology and innovation and professional development. I am super passionate about social and emotional wellness for both teachers and students, and I'm really excited about all of the potential and possibilities of managing social and emotional wellness with School Day and Microsoft Teams. During our time together today, we'll share an overview of School Day, as well as an educator's perspective of how you can use School Day with Microsoft Teams to impact the whole learning experience for students. We'll also have some time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions that you might have. So we invite you to respond to our question of, how are you today? Please post your response in the chat and we look forward to seeing your responses to that. And we're going to start by hearing from Mika from the School Day team. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mika. And once again, we'll have time for questions at the end of the webinar.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacey. Hope you can hear me all right. Yes. Okay, if we go to the next slide, then please turn to that. But as Stacey mentioned, so my name is Mika Kasanen. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of School Day. And I really want to thank you, first of all, for joining this webinar. We are so happy for you all to join. In my short section, I'm going to briefly, talk about what's behind the School Day and what the problem is that we are solving. I hope you get a lot of good information out of this. Moving on to the next slide. So, you know this better than we do, but, unfortunately, we live in a world where, student anxiety, mental health, and wellness are big issues. And this is also sort of a global issue and phenomena that we are seeing. And this is really something that's driving our whole team and the whole purpose why we have designed this tool for all educators globally. Moving on to the next slide, please. So, School Day coming from Finland, and Finland having done very well in education globally and then in the different rankings is really based on the foundation that, SEL and wellness are at the core of everything we do in education. And that's the whole purpose and vision how we started the company, is really to, bringing kindness and combining that with AI to make learning more fun and effective by asking a simple question, such as, how are you? Please, let's go to the next slide then. What we are doing and what School Day is all about is based on 30 years of empirical research. We focus on 4 different main areas in SEL and wellness, and these are learning, social emotional skills, social relationships, and well-being. This is also something that we are continuously, researching and working on with leading universities, both in Finland, in the US, and globally. And I have to say, it's a very exciting time to be working on this field, especially as it's evolving so fast. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide then. When we talk about wellness and SEL, how should we go about it? It's of course by, asking the students how they feel. What we have done at School Day is we've created a digital platform, amplifying student voice daily by asking them a set of, a few research-based questions. Questions such as, how are you? I can be open with my friends. My teachers encourage me too often. And these all relate to the previous model that I was showing you just a minute ago. Where this all leads to, and if I may have the next slide, please, is the whole purpose of, by asking students these questions, we want to provide, insights, feedback, and also, light touch tips for classroom, school level interventions. So basically what we are introducing and what we want to, support all educators globally with is having a, light touch intervention tool for continuous improvement, amplifying student voice, and really giving a pulse on how the students are feeling in the schools, in learning, on a daily basis, weekly basis, continuous basis. Moving on to the next slide then. So basically, what the results that we have already seen with schools that are using school days have been very heartwarming. So we have seen, improved performance by, improving grades. We have also seen cases of reducing absences and dropouts. And most importantly, of course, what we, have been able to achieve by having an easy-to-use tool is save time and allocate more time for leadership and teaching. And this has been really important for us on our journey ahead. So to end my short section, what better way to, let one of our students, Olga, she's a rock star, to tell a little bit more about school day. And thank you all for joining. We're happy to answer your questions. And over to Olga and Stacey. Thanks.
I think it's better to learn when you feel happy than when you feel grumpy. It's just like, why am I here? But when you feel good and you learn, it's actually really fun to learn new stuff.
With School Day, we can give students a voice by using cutting-edge technology. We know that there's a huge demand for well-being and social-emotional learning in schools. With School Day, we can provide analyzed data for schools for better decision-making, for allocating resources to where it's needed. With School Day, we can actually identify the real true problems behind the learning and the school environment. Students answer 10 research-based well-being questions daily. It takes about 30 seconds for them to reply, and students have been very pleased with the questions being anonymous, and they feel safe about answering the questions. We ran all these answers through AI and scale and analyze it, and then provide teachers feedback on their student well-being and social-emotional skills. We also provide information for principals and district leaders on how their schools are doing, because we know that each school is unique and they have their own difficulties and problems. Microsoft have been a tremendous partner since day one, been helping us with everything and allocating resources and support all the way. And now with Teams integration, I'm really looking forward to see where we can go to help schools around the world.
I think it's
Thank you so much, Mika, and for sharing the video, Becky. So seeing this video is one of the things that got me super excited about using School Day and thinking about what an innovative solution it could be for our schools. So we know that student social and emotional health and well-being is incredibly important, and it's a topic that's at the forefront of educators' conversations and concerns, both when we're in person and in the virtual setting. We also know that student well-being and social emotional factors significantly impact student learning. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. I love that School Day provides the data and analytics to have some really powerful conversations among our colleagues and with our students that provide reflection and really a way to take action to improve the learning and to really impact student social emotional wellness and health. So we know that teachers' days are very busy. One more reason that we are so appreciative that you are joining us today. School Day is a great solution to save time during our school day. It also collects the data for us from the students, and it uses research-based topics and questions. So as educators, we're always looking to improve and make progress. And this is definitely something that we want to model for our students as well. School Day's platform provides a great environment. It's really friendly for students, and it's an ongoing tool that we can use with students that really will improve their experience in school and in our class. All right, next slide, please. So at the beginning of the webinar, we asked you to respond to the simple question of how are you? And we were able to look in the chat, and it was fun to see all of your responses. We were able to see a lot of great, doing awesome today or tonight for some of you. Some of you kind of had some funny answers. And so by scrolling through, we were able to get a snapshot of your responses. So this is one way that teachers all over the world use data and collect data from students every day, both in person and virtually, to get a pulse for how things are going for their students. So we were able to get a really surface view of how things are going. Now, imagine if we had a more efficient way to gather data from our students, to get responses from students in a way where we as teachers aren't having to create surveys or go through and really analyze all the data on our own and get some deeper answers and responses. So you can use the school day team or the school day app in Teams to gather this kind of data from our students, and it's a great way to measure their social emotional wellness. So no more creating our own surveys to send to students, and no more having to sort through all the responses to really make meaning of the data that we're collecting from students when we do that. So by using School Day with Teams, we can move from what we think, kind of our instinct of what's happening in our classroom from what we're observing and from teacher-created surveys to real data that we can use to move forward with our students. So I really love that students' responses are completely anonymous. I think that's a really important piece. So students' responses to the questions are totally anonymous. That's really important because students can feel safe responding really honestly to the questions that we are asking them. The results are also weighted for validity, which makes a lot of sense. So for example, a question about school lunches is going to have a lower weighted value than one about school safety. So I also really appreciate the variety of questions and that we're able to get really powerful data to be able to make decisions and changes to my class where I can really improve and reflect to make the learning experience better for my students. This would take a lot of time and energy to do on my own, and really it's just not feasible or reasonable to collect this kind of data that School Day provides. So teachers are able to use data like this and resources to make changes to improve the learning and class environment for students, and also to really get some validation of what's going well and what we should continue as teachers. Now, what's really cool is not only am I able to see my own class data, I'm able to compare it to the data for the school. So I can really see how I compare to my colleagues and the classes that are in my own school. I think this is really great because it can promote some good reflection opportunities and as well as opportunities for collaboration among teachers or among colleagues, and also for some PLC conversations. Another great piece is that school administrators and leadership are able to see the school data, so kind of a balcony view of the data of the whole school or even the district, and they're also able to see the data for each individual class. This is a great way to support teachers and have conversations with individual teachers to help with goal setting, and also so that they would have some examples of teachers and class environments that would be best practice for other teachers in the district. Okay, so if we could go ahead and go to the next slide. So I was talking about best practice. Teachers should share the class results with their students on a regular basis, and doing that really provides a culture of transparency. So sharing this data that's being collected from students are really giving their voice and input on a daily basis, so it makes sense to be sharing that with your students. Doing that sends the students a strong message that their voice is powerful and it's valued, and it also creates a sense of community for the class. So it's like sending a message to your students that this is our class, not just my class. So involving students in conversations to reflect about the data and problem solve together is a great way to really impact your class environment and help them to feel invested and engaged and valued, and to really build a class community. So when you do that, teachers and students together can look at the data and the why behind the data. So why things are happening, why there are some areas for concerns, or why there's some things to celebrate. And it's a great way to promote a culture of continuous improvement. So when I saw this for the first time, I could immediately picture learners of all ages. So I could even picture our littlest of learners finding out from their teacher just the information about the class and what their peers are saying and some of the great conversations that could come of that. And I was able to think of our littlest as well as our oldest learners and really discussing that and coming up with solutions together to impact their class. So to me, that's a great way to really just have some engaged and empowered learners as part of our classroom community. All right, so now we've shared some of the components and features of School Day. So pretty soon I'm going to be doing a live demo for you because we want you to get a really clear picture of using School Day. So what you're seeing here is a student view of using School Day, and I'm just going to show a few pieces of that right now using these slides because we want to use our time efficiently. Like I said, we are all busy as educators, and so I'm going to show the student view using these slides, and then I'll be doing a live demo to show the teacher view as well. So looking here, you can see that it's great, visually appealing. It's used some great colors, and just the graphics and things are so student friendly. Students are able to answer questions twice a day, so they can start their morning by answering these questions, and it usually takes less than 30 seconds to do it. They have questions. It has, if they have some feedback cards, it has some different notifications for students, and all in a way that is really friendly for even our youngest of learners and ones that appeal to our older students as well. All right, so you can see here just an example of one of the questions a student might be asked, and the questions are different each time and each day to collect different data. And so here's one of them. It's easy to understand what to do, and students can just click by how they're feeling that day. Now, one thing that I think is really neat is by doing this with all ages of learners and students get in the routine of responding and thinking about this, I think that it really promotes reflection among students because they have to think, how am I doing today? And I think that can help them get into some great habits of reflection and really thinking about their thoughts and feelings. Okay, so I also really appreciate that both students and teachers can get feedback like what you see here. So they can see, like you can see the little green happy face, that's some positive, that's some things that are going well. And then the one next to it is an area of maybe some area of concern or an area of growth. And so I like that students and teachers alike get that feedback. They get kind of like a little summary, and then they also get an idea of what kind of an action piece, so what they can do. So there's some learning at a student level as well, which I just love because it goes back to that continuous loop of improvement for the whole class culture. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and I'm going to demo the teacher view of School Day. All right, so you have heard a lot about the different components and features of School Day, and I am really excited to share with you a live demo so you can really get the clear picture of the great features and magic that School Day really provides. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. All right, so I love that School Day integrates beautifully with Microsoft Teams. I just think it's such a great way to be efficient and just have less things for our teachers and students to manage, different logins and things. And so as you can see, I'm here in Microsoft Teams, and it works those two work very well together. And what we're seeing right now is a student view of school day. And so you can see here that I have some different prompts and things that I can look at. And so I'm first going to look at the questions. So it says I have 10 new questions to answer. And these students can do really quickly. So it usually takes around 30 seconds or less to answer these questions. And what I think is really cool about it is that students get used to it, and so it really just becomes part of their school day, that they are just in the habit of responding to these. And I think possibly an unexpected outcome of it is it would help all learners become really reflective, because rather than just saying, oh, I'm fine today, they are really thinking through some of these different questions and reflecting about how they are doing. So let's take a look at these. So I slept well last night. So then I can go ahead and respond. And as you can see, those move really quickly. I like to help others. My assignments are interesting. I have easy access to learning material. It's easy for me to keep a good daily rhythm. So as you can see from these questions, and the questions vary, the questions vary daily. They really look at things at a micro level, which I think provides amazing feedback for both students and teachers. It also, as a learner, like I said, I think it really would build that habit of reflection of I'm fine, or if you ask a student, hey, how was your day? And they'd say, it was fine. This really does prompt them through that reflection piece. And I am excited to think of the implication of that over time, where even our youngest learners are starting to look at things and really think about each of these different topics. And I think whether we have young learners or at any level that we're starting to do this, whether it's elementary or secondary or higher, that this daily practice and this daily reflection can really have a positive impact in the spillover of really their daily life and interactions with other people as well. So I would like to spend more time with my classmates. I'm good at coming up with new solutions. I feel overwhelmed about my studies. People outside school give me feedback on my studies. I like studying remotely. So that took a little more than 30 seconds because I was talking during it, but you can see how it's really moves along nicely and quickly. And so students can know that it's not going to take a big part of their day. And I also feel like students will be motivated to complete these questions because of these stars here. I can see my progress bar. I have some messages available and some feedback cards. So I just answered those questions and now it doesn't stop there. So I didn't just provide my feedback, but I also provide my feedback for my teacher in school. I also, as a student, receive feedback too. So it's not just a one-way type of responses. So I can go here to the feedback cards. And now I can look and see this helps me go from my answers and really kind of takes it to a different level where it's giving me feedback, kind of summarizing the data that I provided. So you can see here, I have these. Oops. So I have here study support, so that's looking good. And I'm getting fantastic support from my teacher. And I can turn it and I can get even more feedback at that point. And I can get an idea. Learning is easier when there's support available. Your teacher knows and is ready to help. Okay, and so I'll have 3 of these cards that would give me feedback about what's going well. And then I have 3 areas that maybe is an area of concern for me and just something for me to be aware of and think about, and just get feedback over time, and also some ideas on how I can new ideas that I can then implement. So it gives me some power. It really empowers me as a learner, where I can do something as well based on the feedback that I have given. All right, so now, Mika, is there anything that you want to add about this student view before I show the educator view?
Stacey, perfect demo. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, then I will go ahead and, so this is what the student view looked like. We really wanted you to see how well that works for our students. And I get, I'm just really excited about being able to do that, whether students, excuse me, whether students are in person in the classroom, whether they're learning remotely or in a hybrid setting, whether they have one device or many devices. So I really appreciate how manageable that this is for the students. So I'm going to now go to the teacher view of school day, and I'm not going to demo this right now, but you can see here there's a school view as well. And so that's, again, we mentioned this earlier, but I want to point out just one more time how great that is, because that means as an administrator or a school leader, then I can see the insights from each individual teacher. I can see as a school overall, and if school day is used at a district level, I can even compare schools in our district. So I see that as a huge area for goal setting and professional development, and for collaboration among PLCs, because I think it's a great way that we as colleagues can support one another in what's going well, some areas of concern, and just a way that we can really collaborate and share and learn and grow together for all students. Okay, so that would be if I were looking at the school view. I'm going to show the teacher version. So this is the class view, and look how quickly and easily that worked with Teams. So again, I just love how efficient that would be in my day as an educator. So this is really cool. I love that you can use this feedback, this data, in the moment. So as soon as students respond to their questions, I have access to feedback right away. Also, you know, we know teachers' days are busy. So if I just have 60 seconds and I want to look at a quick snapshot, I can do that right here. So I can see these 3 are what's going really well. And then I can also look at some areas of concern, some things that I need to focus on. And if I can do that really quickly during my day, then that's something I can start being proactive immediately if I take a look at these. Also, just looking at the snapshot view, and if I only have just a minute during my school day when I have students with me, then I can also look at these key indicators, and there's 4 of them. And those have different components in each of these as well, which I will show you. We have learning, social and emotional skills, social relationships, and well-being. And so you can see that I can tell what's going really great. Here for me is the learning piece is my highest indicators, and then I can see some areas of concern. So if this is during my school day and I don't have very much time, then this would be some great feedback that I could do something immediately, right away in my classroom. Now let's look back over here. If I had time, then I have this just 1 sentence summary of what's going well, and I can get some more feedback too. So it just gives a little bit more information and helps make this meaningful for me as an educator. So this is just more feedback. Like I have said, I really appreciate is that continual loop of feedback for both students and teachers. So these are my top 3 things that are going really well. And as you know, if I'm looking at that as a teacher, I might reflect about, okay, that's really great, because maybe that was something that my class was more of an area of concern a few weeks ago. And so I can really keep track of the progress that in my class environment. and the interventions that I'm using and how that's working. And so I can also look here. And so these may be some areas of concern for my students. And if my students are concerned, I want the best environment. I want the best learning environment for them. So I can take a look at this. So let's look here. Your students are saying it's too noisy during teaching. So that's the overall feedback. Now I can select this, and now I have some more helpful things. Some students can be sensitive to noise, and it can make learning more difficult if it's noisy. So I love that, because it's not saying or indicating you don't have good classroom management or putting blame in any way. It's just giving some really great ideas of why that could possibly be happening, so that the educator can empathize and really understand that, read those results and data more. So try to find a way to reduce noise in the classroom, talk to students about it, and be careful not to make too much noise yourself. Another good way is to add more quiet work. So I love this piece that said talk to students about it. I think this becomes so much more meaningful for everyone, for the educators and for the students, when it is an ongoing class discussion. Students know that their feedback is valued. It creates more buy-in for them to answer those questions, because they're not just responding to a survey and then not sure what happens with their answers, but if it provides more meaning for them if they are then invited into the conversation and invited to brainstorm. So I think that has a really strong positive impact in the class environment. And I can see our youngest and our oldest learners having those type of conversations, and I think it gives them that regular, maybe daily, maybe weekly practice of really thinking about some data, about input and feedback, and then being proactive about brainstorming and what could we try that could make an impact. So I think that this provides a really great way to impact students' life both in school and out of school by building on those skills. Okay, so again, these are the phenomenon cards. And so I had my 3 that were going really well, and these are based on the current real-time responses, and then the 3 areas of concern. So as a teacher, I can take a look at this even during the school day and start addressing it immediately. I can also, if whenever I do have time, if it's not during the school day, since time during the school day is short, later when I have time to really look at a deeper level at some of these, I can get some great data and information that way too. So looking here at these key indicators, again, there are 4 areas that I'm provided information, and I can see where my students' responses are. I can also see the change over time. So I can see learning, that's what's going best for my students. That seems to be a strength for them and for me, an area that's going really well. And I can also see that there's been an increase in that over the last week. So as an educator, I can think about and reflect about why that might be. And that provides some great information for me as I reflect too. So then when I look here at social emotional skills, it's here still in the green, which is important information for me, but I noticed that there's a 13% drop from the previous week. So that's going to make me think of it as an educator too, and it's going to make me wonder why that might be, what's happening with my students and in our class that may be changing that their feedback there. Social relationships and increase, and well-being and increase. So if I were to look at this, then the one that was really dropping would have been the social and emotional. All right, so let's take a look here, and going with the premise that now I have some more time to dig even deeper into this. So I can select, so I'm looking here at the learning category. And I can see some change over time. I can also, if there are other teachers in my school that is using school day as well, then I can also compare my results with those of other classes in my school. So I think that that's a really nice piece because it's just another way to gauge how things are going in my classroom and to possibly collaborate and with some teaching colleagues to share some ideas. All right, so now, again, I am looking under the learning piece. And here I can see even further that it's broken down under learning to self-studying, learning material, study support, a remote learning environment, and I can get the data and feedback for those too. So here it looks like we increased on the self-studying and we dropped on the rest. And so I'm going to take a look here at this one. I'm going to go, wow, that dropped 36%. Let's take a look at that study support. So then I can look even further and go even farther into the data. All right, so I can kind of look over time and see how that has been impacted and changed. And look here, now I can even go at even a more micro level where I can look at the specific questions that were asked. So it's easy to understand what to do. So that increased, great. It's easy to get support from teachers, great. I get enough help when studying remotely. And so I can see that there was a drop there. So now instead of just looking at the overall topic and doing some reflections and making some assumptions, I now have some really specific feedback as a teacher about some areas to address. I get enough help when studying remotely. So then I can think, okay, so that's what I really need to address with my students and come up with brainstorm some ways where I can help them in that area. And then also hopefully bring it up with my students so that they can be part of that conversation as well. And then I can look here at what has improved and think and reflect, is there something that my students and I have done to cause this type of increase in this? All right, so that's for study support. I'm going to go back to the learning section and let's take a look here. So I went up our data went up 9%, an increase from last week. So let's take a look at that information. All right, so again, I've got this graph that helps me get a visual representation of what's happening, and then I can see the questions that the students were asked. So I can see here that the bottom four had some great improvement, and then my top one is the one that I may want to look at to try to be a little proactive about. I like studying remotely, and so I can take a look and see what's going on. And here's where you can see where I can compare it. This blue line would be my class and the red line would be that of the school. And so I can draw some conclusions based on that as well. All right, so I can select home here. So that was under the learning piece. And so that's where our data had improved and increased since last week. We have some more increase. Let's look here at the social emotional skills. That's where we had a drop from last week. Although as a teacher, if I'm looking, I'm still in the green. So that's making me feel like it's not a super area of concern, but the fact that it did drop 13% is going to make me want to learn more. So I can select that. And just like we saw earlier, we can take a look at some of the data that's provided by School Day based on the students' answers. So I can see here that there's been past performance is going really, really well, but my mind is drawn to the pretty big drop in collaboration and social skills, and also some improvement in some of these other areas. So I love that you can use School Day really quickly during your day teaching, if you just have 60 seconds even just to take a look and start implementing some things. But then when you really want some feedback and to look at things at a deeper level, there's ways to do that. So let's look at the collaboration skills. And I can take a look at these questions. And so I trust people and I'm good at listening to other ideas are some ones that were that had decreased. So these are some different things that I can take a look at. So I can do that for any of these 4 indicators. And so in conclusion, I just really like that I can, as an educator, without using School Day, I have an instinct, and I know maybe if a student isn't all of a sudden isn't completing their work, or their responses they've had a change, or I can tell by many ways that educators use every day to interact with their students. I have some instincts and some observations, but using this feedback from School Day and really these the tips and the feedback and data at so many levels, such a deep level and specifics can make such a huge and positive impact in our class and our school environment. And that makes me more confident as a teacher that I can do what individual students are needing to make it the best environment for our school, for our students, and all of that really impacts the learning for students. All right, so I will go ahead and stop sharing now.
Thank you, Stacey. That was amazing. I just impressed at the way you showcased so many pieces of School Day. Sorry, there's a light. You go ahead and mute.
Okay.
Thanks. Apologize for that. So now we are going to head over to our Q&A time. We have the opportunity to ask Stacey and Mika some questions and ensure that all of you have a chance to get your questions answered from the chat. So we will move to that. So everyone, we have time dedicated at the end of this recording to talk to Stacey and Mika about some of the most popular questions from the chat from the live call. So Mika and Stacey are in the hot seat. We want them to be able to give us some more information based on some of these popular questions. And so let's go ahead and get started, Stacey and Mika. The first question really is for Mika. It's asking, how does School Day comply with data privacy and keep the student responses anonymous? And I saw a question about shared devices specifically. So can you answer that for us?
Yeah, be happy to. And this is something I'm really happy to answer, because data privacy is something that we take really seriously in School Day. So it all starts by, all the, responses and the surveys being anonymous. So we want to, take wellness and SCL on an anonymous level, group level, school level. So we don't identify or profile individual students in the service. So that's something really that is really important for us. And when it comes to the shared devices, so we have seen some practices in some classrooms, and it's again the personal logins. It's something we take really seriously. So you cannot sort of log in with different IDs.
Perfect. Well, one of the next questions that we had coming up in the chat is a really important one, especially given the topic of social emotional learning, and that just was around how School Day is a culturally responsive tool. And I know that Mika, your team has put some really good thought into that.
Yes, we have, and this is again a great question. School Day is all about inclusion. Also, the service, we want to engage everyone, even the silent ones in the classrooms, coming from different cultural backgrounds. So again, I mean, something we have done a lot of work on, and definitely going ahead, we are working with a broad, spectrum of educators, developing the service further also.
And Stacey, just from an educator perspective, what's your thinking around ensuring that all students are honored in the use of a tool like this?
Absolutely. So I feel very confident that they are. And from my perspective, I would totally agree with everything that Mika said. And I also really appreciate the anonymity piece as well. I know that would be really important to students and allow them to really be honest and have transparent answers.
Great. So one of the reasons we're here today is to talk about how School Day integrates with Teams and the Microsoft education environment. So let's start with Stacey here, because a lot of the educators on the call don't need to hear the technical answer. They want to know how this would look in a classroom, how it would work using School Day inside Teams. And I know we had the demo, but just hearing you talk about how you see that playing out might be really helpful.
Right. So I think it's so helpful because School Day integrates beautifully with Microsoft Teams, which really aligns with educators' goals of making things efficient among platforms and just less things for both students and educators to manage. So it integrates really well with Microsoft Teams, just really simplifying the process for both educators and students.
Now, Mika, I don't know if you can share with us, but are there any sneak peek things happening? Are you done with all of your Microsoft integrations? Is there anything new coming?
Oh, this is sort of my favorite subject, to be honest. So we're excited, very excited where we're today. We have a lot of ideas together with the Microsoft team on the upcoming features. So definitely, I mean, integrating it even deeper, using the chats, different notifications is definitely something, we want to introduce rather soon together.
So maybe I can push you into answering this this a little more specifically, because we had a few questions in the chat around how does School Day support students who are not yet fluent readers, especially in the language being used in their school system. So how, can you answer that for us?
Absolutely, be happy to. So we're really excited about the Immersive Reader that Microsoft has introduced, and we've actually already done some piloting within our team, and we're very excited about that because that will, enable for a lot of kids, in the younger age groups to, take the surveys. So it's something we're very excited about.
Yay, that is super exciting. I know that will make a huge impact. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Thanks.
Awesome. That was exactly the response I was excited to hear about. And I think that kind of guides us into if Stacey or Mika, if you have some examples of how School Day has helped students that have those special learning needs.
Would you, Stacey, like to go first, or?
Maybe Stacey, you could talk through, how you think it could be helpful for, a certain type of learner.
Yes, so I think one thing I love about School Day and using it with Microsoft Teams is that it can be accessible for learners who are in the physical learning environment, so actually in schools, and also can be used virtually. And I think given, what's happening in the world right now, I think that that's so helpful and beneficial for teachers to get that feedback from students, and for students to have an easy way to really share how they're feeling and what's happening on a really micro level. It's easy on in a virtual setting or even in a in-person setting to say I'm doing great, I'm doing fine. But then when we really look at a micro level and ask students those questions that really just dig deeper and to the point, I think that that's such valuable information for teachers that can really just be a total game changer for the students' learning environment, and not just their social emotional piece just spills over in so many ways into that learning environment as well. So I think that School Day can really just help bridge that piece overall for all students.
Mika, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I totally love everything Stacey said, and it's exactly so. And of course, we want to sort of engage and connect the entire classroom in the different areas that are covered, in our model service when it comes to, learning, social and emotional skills, well-being, and so on.
Right. And now I'd like to take us to the other end of the spectrum. So we had some people join the webinar who were asking about examples of school day in higher education, so that university level learner. And you know, we've seen the school day environment. It is fun and colorful, and sometimes people think of those tools as being too primary for the younger learners, but I think that this could be utilized at all ages. So what are your thoughts around that?
Oh, that's so true. I mean, we get a lot of questions, you know, from higher education institutions to use the service. Currently, we want to, you know, focus on K-12 education, but definitely, you know, the same areas, the same model applies, you know, to higher education as well. And I think that's definitely something we're excited about further down the road, you know, to also support older students.
And I would agree with that as well. And sometimes we do think that older students might not like that you know, like you mentioned, what it looks like. But actually, you know, I work with teachers and students of all ages, from our youngest to our oldest, and our oldest students and even adults, they respond well to things like stickers and candy and all of those things that maybe we would at first think that just our youngest learners would. So I really think that it's a great for all ages, and I think that it's quick and efficient, which is really nice. And values the learner's time, and also the feedback that is given is super helpful and beneficial as well. So I think that it's something that they would respect and appreciate.
Great. Well, we're about out of time, but I do have this one last question I think is really timely and also it's going to be useful in the future. So right now, much of the world is still in a remote learning scenario if school is in session, you know, for the school year. And moving forward, we know that many systems are working on hybrid learning models, but we also have blended learning that happens, you know, or even virtual schools that happen, and you know, regardless around the world. So how might school day be used in that scenario when a student is not physically in front of a teacher every day?
Yes, I mean, with you know, remote learning that we've seen this spring, I think everyone's sort of understood even more than ever how important, you know, wellness and SEL are in learning. So I think the future, and then especially short term, we are looking at different hybrid models, and for that, school day is the perfect tool because it helps the teacher to stay connected with the students, like in any setting, and actually any and all settings, and that's something, you know, we have been working a lot this spring, and I feel that this, you know, the content model is really good, regardless of you know, the setting of the teaching.
Yeah, I would add that it's not only a tool, but really I see it as a solution in all environments, especially when we're talking about a hybrid model, because teachers may not be able to have any face-to-face interaction and build those kind of relationships that you are able to in person. And so this really gives such a clearer picture of where each student is at, and not only the picture of it, but also gives targeted interventions and suggestions on ways that teachers can then address each student's individual needs, as well as students receive that too. So it's really just this cycle of continuous feedback and improvement and support.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. I'll go ahead and transition us over to the closing slides here with our survey and our Twitter connections. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to see, you know, and to hear your answers to the chat. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, everyone, for viewing this webinar and joining us live. If you are choosing to track your hours at education.microsoft.com, Go ahead and set up a profile there if you haven't, and then go ahead and redeem an achievement code through your profile. The achievement code for this session is right here on the slide. So you can claim time and earn badges and points in the Microsoft Educator Center for joining us today. We'd love to thank you for joining us. If you are tweeting out your participation today, go ahead and use the handles @SchoolDayCom and @Microsoft.edu. You can also include the hashtag SEL for social emotional learning. In addition, we have a survey we'd love for you to complete after viewing this webinar or recording. The AKA URL for that is on your screen now. We do want to make sure that those of you completing the survey and who registered for the webinar get special access to a promo code for School Day in your school. So make sure to fill that out, and thank you again for joining.